know about you folks, but all this talk about food is making me hungry. You've heard about oatmeal?
Yes.
You've heard about sausages?
Yeah.
We're about to hear about the most delicious food of all. Do you know what that
Fried
is?
chicken. Pizza. Fried chicken.
Fried chicken?
Sushi.
Sushi?
Yeah.
Good enough.
Sushi.
These all names of very delicious foods. Yes? Yes, spaghetti is very delicious too, but the most delicious food of all, succulent, juicy, roasted children. I'll tell you all about it. Once upon a time, a poor woodcutter lived at the edge of a great dark wood. This wood was called the Schwarzwald. Can you say that? Schwarzwald. That means the Black Forest. No bad things happen in there. As Julia described, the life of a woodcutter is very hard. It's hard to make very much money, especially when you don't have a cart or a horse to bring your wood to market. So the woodcutter and his family, which consisted of his son, Hansel, his daughter, Gretel, and his second wife, who was not the children's mother and was not a very nice person. They all lived struggling very, very hard at the edge of the Schwarzwald. And they got poorer and poorer until a famine struck the land. A famine is when there's a scarcity of food. There's just not enough food to go around, especially if you're a poor woodcutter. Things got worse and worse until finally the family had only one loaf of bread to split between them. That night, the woodcutter's wife said to him, Husband, we can't go on like this. The four of us can't survive with the meager amount of money that we can make as woodcutters. So I propose that we take the children deep into the great dark wood and leave them there. Because you never know what kind of opportunities children might meet with in a great dark wood. They might be adopted by a king. They might land lucrative jobs. Or they might be eaten by wild beasts. The husband said, Wife, I can't leave my children deep in the great dark wood. That would be unkind. And she said, look, either we split up and try to survive 2 by 2, or all 4 of us will starve. He said, it's a hard choice, but I guess you're right. Now, unfortunately, the children overheard this conversation, and they were terrified that their parents meant to leave them deep in the great dark woods. Gretel said, Hansel, what shall we do? We might be eaten by wild beasts. Hansel said, never fear, Gretel. I shall pickle something. Late that night, when the family was asleep, Hansel crept out the window and gathered up a pocket full of gleaming white stones, just like this one. You guys read the story? Check it out. Having filled up his pocket, when they set out the next morning into the great dark wood, Hansel periodically would stop, turn around, and face the house. What he was doing was dropping a stone along the path so that to mark his way back. His stepmother said, Hansel, what are you doing? Hurry up. And he said, my little white kitten is waving to me from the roof. And she said, silly boy, there is no white kitten. That is just the sun reflecting off the chimney. So the family trudged further and further into the wood until finally they found a clearing where the father built a great fire, and they left the children each with a small piece of bread by the fire, telling them that they were going off to cut wood and return for them later. But the children knew better. They ate their piece of bread and fell asleep by the fire. And when they awoke, the fire was out, and the great dark wood was dark, not a star in the sky. But soon the moon came out, and they could see each of the little white stones pointing their way back to their own cottage. It took them all night, but they arrived at the cottage early in the morning. Needless to say, their stepmother was very cross. She did not expect them to return. But she said, you naughty children, you've been out all night. You kept us up worried. Hurry up and get ready to do your chores. So the things went on as they had for a while. The family struggling on just barely a pittance to live on, when another famine struck the land. This time, the family was down to 1/2 loaf between them all. So again, the wife proposed, husband, we can't go on like this. Let us take the children again deep into the great dark wood and leave them there, where they might meet with unique opportunities. So again, the children overheard the conversation. Gretel said, Hansel, what shall we do? They mean to leave us deep in the great dark wood. Hansel said, never fear, Gretel. I shall think of something. So again, when the family was asleep, he attempted to escape the house through the window, but his stepmother had barred it because she she didn't want him filling his pocket with white stones this time. So there was no way out of the house. So Hansel had to think of another plan. The next day, the family set out into the great dark wood, and each of the children was given a small piece of bread as they had been the last time. So this time, Hansel again stopped periodically to look back at the house. What he was doing was breaking up his piece of bread and dropping crumbs along the path since he didn't have any white stones to leave. So the family went deep, deep, deep into the dark wood, past the first clearing, and found another, where their father again built a fire, and set the children down and told them that they would return for them. The children ate their bread, sat by the fire, and fell asleep, and once again awoke when it was dark. Gretel was again terrified, said, Hansel, Hansel, what should we do? But Hansel said, never fear, I've left a trail of breadcrumbs. But when he turned around and looked to find it, it wasn't there. For the birds of the forest had eaten all of the crumbs, and the children were lost and stranded deep in the great dark wood and couldn't find their way home. They wandered for 1 day, 2 days, 3 whole days they wandered without anything to eat. And they were despairing of ever finding a home and comfort when they came upon a small cottage. And wonder of wonders, the walls of the cottage were made of bread, and the shingles of the roof of the cottage were made of slices of cake, and the windows were made of spun sugar. The children were ravenous. They hadn't eaten for 3 days, so they fell to eating the house without a thought when they heard a voice from inside. Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who is gnawing on my house? And an old woman emerged from the house. Oh, what beautiful children you are. Please come in and have a delicious meal with me. So she sat the children down and gave them great big glasses of milk, and they had warm pancakes with fruit and nuts, and it was delicious. And they ate until they were full, and they fell asleep. The next morning, though, when they woke up, they found that the old woman was not a kind old woman at all. She was a witch, and she had locked Hansel in the stable. And she woke Gretel up and said, get up, you lazy bones. You need to go and draw water and chop wood and boil the water and make porridge, because I need to fatten up your brother and eat him. So Gretel had to go chop the water and boil it and make porridge and serve it to Hansel day after day. And she fed him all kinds of delicious things, of which she got nothing. Hansel got to eat porridge and roasted chickens and bread and milk and all sorts of delicious things. As he ate, Hansel secreted a little bone because he had a secret plan. The witch made him every day put his finger outside of the stable so that she could feel it and see if it was getting fat enough, because she wanted him to be juicy and succulent when she ate him. And Hansel, every day, he put out a bone just like this. It felt just like this. And the witch couldn't see very well, so she believed that he was his finger. So week after week, she kept feeding him, and he wouldn't get any fatter. Well, he was getting a lot fatter, but the bone wasn't. Finally, she lost patience. Said, Gretel, I've waited long enough. I mean to eat your brother today. Go and draw some water and start the oven up. So Gretel got some water from the well, lit up a fire, and kindled the fire in the oven. Because the witch wanted to bake some bread to go with the juicy slices of Hansel. So when she was ready to cook, she asked Gretel to see if the oven was hot enough to bake the bread. Gretel knew what she was up to, for she meant to cook Gretel too. So Gretel came up to the door of the oven, pretended that she couldn't fit herself in. It was plenty large enough. But Gretel was a clever girl. And she said, I'm sorry, but I can't seem to fit into the oven to see if it's hot enough. The witch shoved her aside, said, silly girl, I can walk into the oven myself. And she did so to prove her point. Gretel immediately slammed the door, and they roasted the witch to death. Looking around the cottage, in addition to all kinds of delicious food, they found sacks of rubies and pearls and gold. So they filled up their pockets, just as Hansel had filled his pockets with white stones earlier, and set off for home. As it turns out, the witch's house was right near the market road, so getting home was no problem whatsoever. When they got there, they found Their father overjoyed to see them, and their stepmother had died. She was eaten by wild beasts.
Yay!
So Hansel, Gretel, their father, all lived happily ever after on the gold and the rubies and pearls, and that's the end. Thank you.